Welcome to the eCommerce Profitability Show, a podcast by Link My Books. We speak with profitable e-commerce store owners and experts to help your e-commerce business become profitable. Because revenue is vanity, profit is sanity. I'm your host, Dan Little. Welcome to the e-commerce Profitability Show. Joining us today is Josh Blackburn, an e-commerce marketer with years of experience boosting business revenue to seven-figure levels by managing and optimizing their digital aspects. Josh, welcome to the podcast.
Welcome, buddy. Pleasure to be here.
Cool. So, can you talk to me about your career so far? You founded Regal Gentleman in 2014 after a bad haircut. I definitely want to know more about this.
Yes.
I can't think of many businesses who would start like that. Just how bad was this haircut and why did you decide to start your own business?
So I'll never forget it. I remember going to a barbershop. It was one of those barbershops where they're like, you're in and out within like 20 minutes. 10 quid haircut, cheap and cheerful, brilliant. And I remember at that time, I don't know if I realised it, but basically they forgot to do one of my sideburns at the lower part. And I've got a theory that maybe I was just too nice, too scared to bring it up in the chair. But I remember walking back home and my sister just grilled me. She was like, what have you done? So I went all the way back and I was like, do you know what? The next haircut I get, I'm going to go to a nice London barbershop. I'm just going to pay a bit more. I was doing my apprenticeship at the time. I was like, I'm going to invest in a good haircut. And I remember going to a barbershop in London called Joe & Co. and just being surrounded by all these products that I'd never seen before. And the branding was really slick. It was just a brilliant experience. And at the time, I had acne, quite bad acne. So I was really into how can I feel better and more confident about myself, what my insecurities. And I just remember leaving that barbershop, messaging my friend and was like, mate, did you want to sell some grooming products online? We started on eBay, thought, okay, this is actually working. This is quite good. And then we started our first Shopify store under Regal Gentleman, selling other branded products. So kind of like a very small niche of boots. And we started during the period where beard oils became this big thing. Beards were like, oh my God, what are these? We were selling beard oils. But linked to this podcast, we didn't realize at that age what a profit meant and what a margin meant. So we quickly realized that selling other branded products weren't going to make a scalable business. So yeah, that's how that started.
Nice. What a cool starting story. I've heard lots of business start stories where it's been like, oh yeah, I needed this and nobody sold it, so I did that. So it's great to hear like another vibe of that. That's cool. What a good story. So do you have that on your website as well as like about us?
No, what? Honestly, it's something. Have you ever experienced, because you've lived through it and it's been so long ago, you forget to appreciate how cool of a story it is? I've fallen into that trap because every time I tell someone, they're like, mate, this is amazing. This is really cool. It's like living in London and just not remembering that you're around all these great landmarks and you just forget. So I probably do need to make more of an effort.
Yes, 100% you should shout about that. That makes a cool About Us story. We've actually just rewritten our About Us story as well through some guidance from like a fractional CMO. And he was talking about that, saying that like your current About Us is just boring. It's so typical. You need to make it so, what is your story? What is it that made you decide to create this business? And I think for you, I couldn't think of a less boring story.
It's probably something that ChatGPT probably couldn't replicate.
Exactly.
So I'll probably leave it there.
Absolutely. So anyway, you're here to talk about zero-party data. So for anyone not sure, what is that and how does it differ from first, second and third-party data?
So zero-party data is essentially data that your customers give you by choice. So think quizzes on a website, questions on an email capture, what's your goal with this skincare product? I want to do this. That's zero-party data, giving that data. First-party data is, you think, Google Analytics, actions that a customer's taken or a user's take on the website. And third-party data is what we're now losing and was such a big part of the iOS updates around our data on Facebook ads, Google ads. This is how many conversions you've had. This is the audiences and such. So they're the split between the three.
So what strategies do you have for encouraging consumers to engage through zero-party data?
So this is the interesting thing that I've realized over the last 6 months. Not loads has to change. So pop-ups on e-commerce stores and email captures have been around for a very long time. That's nothing new. But recently it's realizing that, you know what, just giving up an email for a discount code isn't going to serve your e-commerce business well for the long term because you're getting no data from it. So using that same way of, okay, can you offer a discount on first purchase? But then also maybe asking 2 to 4 questions on that journey that also makes you get more out of it, but also so they can have a more personalized experience. I've been very surprised that the conversion rate is still good. When I first saw this and I saw softwares that I'll talk about, I was like, yeah, but who's going to answer 4 questions? You know, it's shocking that people are happy to do it. And I think it's because it's about them. It's, okay, you're asking me questions about what I want. And I think everyone loves that deep down, if as long as it's then used correctly.
Yeah. It's funny you should say this because we've recently done some split testing of our registration page for Link My Books, in that it used to be, it was just like sign in with Google, sign in with Xero, sign in with QuickBooks, and there was no questions. And so again, this fractional guy said, why don't you try asking some questions first and then letting them sign in with one of these platforms and just split test to see if it works. And I was like, well, that's definitely not going to work. That's going to kill the conversion right out the door. And then I tested it and it was like, it didn't make a massive difference, but it was positive in the way of people who answered those questions were more likely to start a trial and more likely to become a paying customer. I was like, that is so strange. But when you think about it, it's sort of like a psychological buy-in, isn't it? It's, you're asking them some questions that, like you say, they want to answer because it's about themselves. They're probably thinking in their head, okay, the more I give them, the better service they're going to be able to provide me. And then because they've already answered those questions, when they then get to the next page and they're prompted to put their email in, it's not the first thing you're asking them for. So it's quite clever, really. So the more I looked into it, the more I was like, yeah, he was probably right. So yeah, I'm all for that. Like, so you actually do that in your pop-ups now. So in terms of when you're offering a discount instead of just asking for email.
Exactly, yeah. So I use a really great software for my clients called FormToro. Founder John's a really intelligent guy. He's been on the zero-party data side for long before us chatting about this today. But what's so powerful about this platform is you're capturing the questions, but it's then also giving context to the answers. So not only are we getting all this data about our customers, we can then see, interesting, the person that answered that leads to the most conversions and revenue. And that's where the power is. There's 2 sides. You've got to capture the data, but then can we start to add context to these answers?
That's quite cool. So it's almost like analytics built in as well.
Exactly that.
I'm going to make a note of that and have a look at that. That sounds cool. So how future-proof is this zero-party data? Considering like Google are looking at removing cookies from Chrome browser, for example, how's this going to be protected?
It's probably the most future-proof you have because it's your data. It's all under your house. And I think that's where the biggest competitive advantage is for brands. I think I saw a data insights recently around 2,000 e-commerce stores were analyzed. And only 1% of stores was asking questions beyond what's your email, what's your birthday. And that is incredible to me. That's so exciting, but also mental. So it's the most future-proof you've got because you're not relying on anyone that can take it away from you. Just like how people say, if you can capture an email and have your own database, that is yours. All this data is yours. And I think it's even powerful if you've got brands out there that want to sell down the line. Being a brand that's got, okay, I've got 1 million emails versus I've got 1 million emails, plus I know 70% want this, 60% like this, 40% have this. To me, it's a very simple winner that what's more powerful.
Yeah, it's just like Facebook and Google have been doing against us for years and years anyway, isn't it? Building up a database of tens of thousands of data points on each of their customers to be able to better serve them with the product. So yeah, very smart.
What's hilarious though about that is I look back to the Facebook ads and Google ads and how accurate did the conversion actually come from their platform? They're honestly last click and they want you to think that because they want you to spend more money. The beautiful part of this is no one's trying to get anything out of you. You can see your data plain sight. So you even have that power.
So in terms of then retention and customer acquisition, how does this play into that?
Sure. So I'd split it into 2. So I think if we start with retention, I think there's 2 sides that this works really well. Think your welcome flow and your welcome series and your post-purchase journey. So if we focus on these 2, if we're able to know at email capture level that the customer has dry skin, wants a radiant glow, imagine it's a skincare product, we can then start personalizing the welcome series based on those answers. So if you're someone that wants dry skin, you will get an email dedicated talking you through of what you want. So I think with the acquisition side, that's where it can be really helpful. With the retention side, if you can find out what their number one goal is for buying this product, you can use the post-purchase journey to make sure that they have a best of a chance to achieve that. So not sending them a discount as soon as they're purchased with get 10% off your second order, but be like, hey, if you want to improve your dry skin, make sure you follow these first 3 steps when you get your product. Because ultimately, if the customer achieves their goal, they'll come back. The product does so much speaking for itself. But then along the lines with acquisition as well, like what I was saying about the context, that data can then start being used to personalize ads, landing pages, copy. I had one recently where one of the highest answers from the survey was producing the lowest conversion and revenue. So suddenly we're like, right, is that either a site issue or are we attracting the wrong customer? Because this has much higher conversion and revenue. And it just allows us to start making smarter decisions. At the moment, most e-commerce brands, apart from a very few, are very similar. It's a very commoditized market. Not many real USPs going around, if we're being honest with ourselves. So the only winners at the minute are Facebook and Google, because they're like, yeah, pay more, spend more. Whereas if we can use this data to be like, right, this is our highest quality audience, this is what they like, this is what they want to see, we're just going to tap into that. And I think that's where it can start becoming really powerful.
So do you then create sort of like landing pages for like solutions specifically for those groups of customers and then run ads specifically to those landing pages targeting specifically those customers?
I'd say it's always best to go with the 80-20 rule. Where's the biggest win here? So I would never advocate to creating 30, 40 different landing pages for small segments of people. And from my experience, there's always an outlier with a winning data point. But it's more making sure that based on the conversion of the answers, is our website and our ad speaking to that person? Basically.
So it's picking the lowest hanging fruit and then tailoring the website to them specifically. It's talking to that one person.
Exactly. I saw an interesting post on LinkedIn. This never happened to me personally, but they had a really good post-purchase survey. So the customers ordered, our surveys come up, and they asked the question, what feature around this product are you most looking forward to? And the feature that was most mentioned wasn't actually on the product page. So for them, they're like, wow, okay. So clearly that's what people are really looking forward to. We're not even mentioning it. So how many customers, I think it's maybe they've explained it in their own words, maybe. So it could be as simple, if it was a moisturizer, maybe they're saying that I want to get rid of my dull skin, but that isn't even on the product page. It's maybe have a radiant glow. And it sounds little, but those little tweaks can be really powerful for someone thinking, right, that's what I want. That's what I'm after.
It's quite a smart way of getting your customers to write your copy for you, that to ask them, what are you most looking forward to? It's almost like saying, if you were going to sell this to yourself 3 weeks ago before you bought it, what would you say? So it's really smart, that. I'm going to make a note of that as well.
And who better to write the copy? It's also going through reviews of how customers have explained the product is a great way to relook at your copy. Who better to write the copy than the people you're trying to get to buy your product?
Exactly, and there's ways you can use AI now to analyze all your reviews and pick out common themes and stuff like that. So yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think that's a great way to do it. I'm all for like tailoring copy to specific personas, and I think getting the customer to almost have a huge level of input into that copy is a no-brainer, really, when you think about it. Very smart.
100%.
So which of those areas between retention and acquisition is more important for a business owner to focus on, do you think, and why?
Oh, great question. Great question. I was recently having a debate about this with someone on LinkedIn. So in my opinion, I believe that unless acquisition exists, retention has no chance to be there. So for me, I think for any D2C brand that's struggling to get that scalable retention or customers at scale, for me, finding out what are these high quality customers like so you can improve your acquisition. Same with retention. Once you've got that acquisition, you want to have your best chance at retaining those customers. So I think they're both as important, but I'm really passionate about acquisition because I think without acquisition, businesses will starve. Email lists will starve if you're just sending emails to the same customers constantly. So I'm going to stand firm and go, although I'm a retention marketer, which is crazy, I'm a big believer in acquisition and scalable acquisition.
Yeah. No, I think that I agree that when you're starting a business and when you're scaling it, that if you can't get the acquisition right, then it's almost like thinking about your bucket, isn't it? I talk about the leaky bucket quite often, and it's like you put more customers into that bucket, that's your acquisition. You're retaining your customers, that's the holes in the bucket that you're plugging. But unless you've got customers coming in, there's no one falling out anyway. So I agree that that's where you need to start. Do you think that changes as a business sort of evolves, so to speak?
For sure. It's such a context scenario because I could go into one business tomorrow that's scaling massive, but got a massive retention problem. And I'm like, right, this needs to be a real focus. So I think 100% there is a time where retention is very important. And it linking back to this podcast, if you want to make more profit and you want to become a more profitable company, retention is everything. You know, it's so hard. I see people saying acquire customers at a profit in 2024. It's a lot easier said than done. So yeah, I think what you said, small.
No, so I was just going to say, I think retention plays a big part in profitability as well. Because if you're looking at acquiring a customer as I can acquire a customer to get an order of such and such value, my average order value, or you're looking at acquiring customers based on their lifetime value, then I think that it's a very different picture, isn't it? And the lifetime value is so heavily influenced by retention that I think that as you do start to evolve and you do start to scale up your ads, you'll realize that it's just not possible to acquire customers at a profitable level if you're only looking at that first order, that you need to be looking at how can I get them back in the door and then increase my lifetime value of that customer so that I can spend more on ads and acquire more customers to then get more lifetime value.
Totally agree. I totally agree. And I think that's where that post-purchase journey, especially for that first time order, becomes so important because it's, increasing product adoption, making the use of your product a habit in their routine. All these little things go hand in hand with them wanting to come back. Obviously, if the product's not good, that's a problem for a business that they need to go and solve. But there's a lot of prompts that we can send that can aid that retention process.
So what strategies can you recommend for keeping these zero-party data models scalable as the business grows?
Biggest thing I've learned is to not have too many permutations of something. It's so easy. Let's take a Gymshark, for example, an absolute massive company. I'm sure if they could easily do something like this and get so many different touch points of data. And then suddenly the internal team are looking and thinking, wow, what do we do here? Where do I start? You've got 20 different emails going to little subsegments. So I would say keep it very simple. I think 2 to 4 questions, in my opinion, is more than enough. And I think always look to focus firstly on the 80-20 rule. What is the biggest group that's driving that biggest revenue? Now that, and then as it grows, and if you get more time over the course, you can focus on the other parts. Because, yeah, like you said, that's so easily done. And I've made that mistake myself in the past.
It's very easy to spread yourself thin and lose focus. We definitely did that in the beginning where we looked at lots of different countries. We targeted US, Australia, UK, and we did loads of different sales channels. And it's like, you can't really speak the customer's language if you're speaking everybody's language.
100%.
I think it comes back to that persona thing, doesn't it? It's like you need to nail who is your actual ideal customer and speak to them, use their own language against them, not against them.
Whatever.
So how can direct-to-consumer brands effectively balance the use of zero-party data with the need for privacy and transparency?
That's a good question. I think as long as you're making sure that the customer is subscribing to marketing emails, that's within the UK, that's GDPR. I know that's different for different countries. I think all the same rules still apply. It's not about capturing zero-party data from someone who hasn't subscribed to your email and thinking, but I'm sending them such a great personalized journey. Consent is still very important. So I think the best thing again about zero-party data is the customer is giving you this. They're physically themselves are giving you this. So they're aware that they're providing you this data. I like to think that means it increases the trust with the brand because you're getting little action steps. But for anyone watching, just make sure that they're consenting to emails. Otherwise, it misses the point.
I suppose there's two parts to it as well, isn't there? Because collecting that zero-party data, you're asking them the questions, they're providing you them and says free will. And then there's the sort of bit that comes after that, which is what do you change internally inside your website? And that can be done without them ticking the box. But if they don't tick the marketing box, then you can't send them any post-purchase stuff and like do other email marketing tactics. But you could still use that data to tweak the website, I suppose.
100%. Yeah, you have full reign of tweaking the website, changing ads, updating copy. Once you've got that data and you've got those data points, you can do whatever you want in that sense. And that data will stay with you. So you've always got it. You're not going to have Apple come out with an update and think, I'm going to lose all that now. It's all yours.
So we touched briefly on it, but what does the future look like for consumer data and e-commerce, and how can we prepare better for it?
I think the future of data and e-commerce is definitely going to be around having our own in-house databases and data captures. Every company, in my opinion, needs to start thinking of how can we collect our own data related to our customer and our business. Third-party cookies are dying. I think first-party are probably going to get less and less accurate. So if you want to maintain accuracy and have power, building in that zero-party data strategy is going to be the best for you. Again, 1% are asking questions post the basics. And then hopefully we'll see an e-commerce and a D2C space start making smarter decisions because they're capturing more high quality answers. Hopefully from that, we'll see less wasted spend on Facebook, Google, higher conversion rates, you'd hope, because we're talking to those data points. So I'm quite excited about the future. I think the biggest friction point I've felt recent is getting people excited about it and explaining it. Because sometimes when you go in and say, let's build a zero-party data strategy, it's probably not the most sexiest of things to share it. But I think once people see how it can help their bottom line, it has real power.
And so in terms of tailoring the ads, is there anything we can do in terms of targeting, or is it all just copy sort of things?
Good question. So where I've put a lot more effort into the email marketing and retention side, I'm sure there's a meta advertiser that can answer this much better than me. But I think what I've gathered from Facebook and this now is the targeting is becoming less and less relevant because even Facebook don't really have that data anymore. And it's more the creative doing the talking, whether it's a video or whether it's a static image, allowing the copy and the creative to do all the talking. And then hopefully the algorithm would learn these are the type of people engaging with this.
So then specifically, if you're more into the email side of things, then can you give me some examples of stuff? I know you've talked about the sort of post-purchase retention stuff, but is there anything else that you would sort of like to touch on?
Yeah, for sure. So I think another area, and it comes under zero-party data, is capturing quality of research within the high-performing flows. So it's very similar. Customers are giving you their answers. But if we take the welcome flow and the abandoned checkout flow, there's a good chance they were very high intent customers that either have got to the flow and maybe haven't purchased. There's a real opportunity for brands there to just create an email that says, hey, look, we've noticed you've not purchased. It's fine, but we'd love to know the reason why. And that can be really great at spotting any potential holes in the customer journey that you might not have known. There's a really great software called spellbound.io, that is really making it easier for interactive emails. And it also allows for in-email surveys. So from a perspective of experience, it's really slick. I had one example a few months ago where we found that people were getting confused because the shipping price wasn't the same as it was on the website. There was a little hole in the customer journey. And from that, we started seeing, right, guys, we need to fix that. And it's little things like that. You never know what pops up.
As your brand scales and you start to have hundreds of landing pages instead of just 5 or 6, then it is hard to keep a track of making sure that everything is spot on everywhere. And customers won't be interested in opening a new ticket and telling you actively something that's wrong with your site. They'll abandon, won't they? So I think that it is important. We use stuff like Hotjar and get like warnings from like rage clicks and things like that to make sure that if something is going wrong, that we can then have a look at it But yeah, I think asking customers is a great way. So would you give them options then? Would you sort of say like, what went wrong? Was it A, B, or C? Or would you just sort of like leave it open to them?
So I think I've done both, and I've seen both. Some brands ain't comfortable with giving options because they think it gives people an upfront reason to be like, oh yeah, the shipping is expensive, isn't it? So I've definitely seen some brands hesitant. I've probably used more open questions and let them just explain it, and you suddenly start seeing a trend. And what might be a good way is if you start with open, start seeing a trend, and then those common answers become your sub options further down the line potentially. There was a good example once with a sofa brand, and the feedback was, oh, we're just not sure how comfortable this is going to be. And that was a really great way of thinking, okay, we can add this in the email and start sharing how the comfortability factor. So brand preference, but if you're nervous, you might want to start with an open question just so you don't lead anyone down any paths.
And it's got me thinking about that you're then getting your audience to sort of write your copy for you, because when you're getting them to point out what all the bad things are, then you can sort of write copy to target those things as well, can't you? So it's very, very clever. How did you factor these principles into your work as a freelancer at Regal Gentleman?
Oh, so Regal, it's an interesting one. So I've done a lot more work with this with my retention marketing agency, for sure. But I think it's just in a base of consistent principles and making sure that you follow those principles. So I'm now a massive believer in zero-party data. So whether it's Regal or my clients, it's how can we capture high-quality data at email stage? How can we capture data at post-purchase stage? And then how can we use that data to make smarter decisions? I just constantly try and remind myself of those three things.
So how is it affecting these businesses that you're working with? Or what sort of, have you got any numbers that you can provide in terms of like increase in profitability or increase in like sales or anything like that? Is there something that implement this and it can give you X percentage boost or whatever?
I think a good data point I can probably use. So one of the data points I've learned over the last year is the subscription to conversion rate. So of the people that signed up to your email list, how many converted? Before, I would never look at this data. It's very common to see people that 10% of people sign up to the email list. We had with one client where they was converting about 10% of people that subscribed to their list. But once we built out the welcome flow journey based off of the data we was collecting, that was able to get up to 30% just from those changes. And it's just a smarter way to analyze the data, because anyone could sign up to an email list. But of those people, how many are actually converting?
It's coming back to it all the time, isn't it? It's like nurturing the customer through the journey and making sure that you can get as much lifetime value out of them as possible by doing so.
Mate, I've got experience that I can touch on. There's so many founders that don't really know about their COGS and their financials. So if you wanted to chat about it around that.
Yeah. So there's a trait among new entrepreneurs that they need to do everything themselves. But what are the common mistakes you've seen e-commerce businesses make when it comes to sort of the accounting side of things?
So I think the biggest thing that always shocks me is that the amount of times I've spoken to founders that don't really know their COGS and their financials. How much are they capturing a client at a profit? What is the marketing spend they need? How much it's costing them to make the product? Is that sustainable? So I think the biggest mistake I see is I think accountancy, very similar to data, can be seen as a very unsexy meh thing, but it's so important. And I think the more data and understanding founders and D2C brands have of their financials, the smarter decisions, again, they can make. But usually I think they get so excited about acquiring customers and building that business that they forget sometimes to actually think, okay, am I doing this sustainably? I'm excited about brands coming into the space now, because I think now we're long gone are the days of cheap Facebook traffic. I think you need to know your margins now to survive in this space. But back in 2014, 2015, I think people just thought, yeah, I can get a customer on Facebook for £2. Yeah, go on then, just chuck a 500 quid a day budget on it. That's brilliant. And that's as far as it went. Sometimes it might be bringing numbers and data isn't for everyone. Like, I'm not great at creative. That's not really how my brain works. So even if it's bringing people in that can do all that side for you, I think is the biggest thing a lot of D2C brands can do with when it comes to accounting.
I think that you've nailed it on the head there. I think that first off, you need to know your numbers. If you don't know your numbers and you don't know that you're profitable, and I think also that you don't know where your profits are coming from, because it's so common now that people are omni-channel. They're selling on Shopify, they're selling on Amazon in North America, they're selling on Amazon in Europe. They're also doing a bit of Etsy, and they're focusing all their time often on one of those channels, normally Shopify. Let's, for example, I know this was what I did personally, spent 90% of my time trying to make Shopify work because people told me, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And I was doing loads of sales on Amazon and nothing on Shopify. So spent like 6 months trying to make Shopify work. And at that point, I'd had the data to be able to say, look, 90% of your effort is going here and 90% of your profit is over there. Like, why are you not spending more time over there? Like, I think it's so important these days to know not only what your profit is, but where it's coming from and where you can make a difference as well. Like, what are the fees that are fixed and what are the fees that you can actually do something about by having a better optimized business? So I think it is.
Amazon's a crazy one. Like, I'm all for, like, there's some brands that say, look, we want to be everywhere for awareness. And I think if that's the goal, that's fine. But the reality is you get no data on your customer from Amazon. Give you nothing, plus they're taking a massive fee. So I had experience with brands in the past that easily became over-reliant on Amazon because top-line revenue looked great. But like you said, once you actually dug into it, it was stopping people from converting when you'd get a much better profit.
I think, again, it comes back to this lifetime value thing, doesn't it? It's like the customers on Amazon, they're very unlikely, selling a subscribe and save product, they're unlikely to come back and buy another one of your products unless you're a big brand, to be frank. I think that any consumer looking on Amazon, they go and they search that product and they buy one of the top 3 results. So if you're not in the top 3 results for all of your products, you're not going to win across the board. So your lifetime value is not really as high on the Amazon side. Whereas on the Shopify side, yes, you build a brand, you've got that message and you've got the ability to message the customer and you've got lots of tools that you're sort of in your armory that you can apply and grow that lifetime value, which will allow you to spend more money on ads. But I do see both sides. Like, I know you're saying like Amazon take a fee and it's a lot of revenue, but there's not much sort of for it. But I think that it's just so easy to scale. I think it's so easy to, like, if I was starting a business, Amazon would certainly be the way I would start and test the waters. And it's like, they do a lot of marketing for you. They're doing a lot for their fee, basically. And then I would potentially scale out to Shopify. Would you do it that way?
Oh, I think I'm so pro Shopify. I think I'd still go the Shopify route. But mate, I can totally relate to you because even it comes down to your goals, right? Like if you're someone that's like, look, I want to make 5K a month, have a good lifestyle, I don't want anything too big. That might be a lot more achievable on Amazon because they've got the audience. Whereas I think if you're someone that's coming in with this really unique USP D2C brand that's heavily backed with investors and you say, look, going to start on Amazon, they might look to it and be like, whoa, what? It's so, I think that's the one thing I'm trying to remind myself constantly, that everything's so contextual. And even my advice today, it might change depending on the business type or what the business is. And as a marketer, I'm always trying to remind myself of that.
Yeah, I definitely think you've got a lot more freedom with the customer journey and the sort of ability to nurture that customer with your own brand. Makes total sense. Yeah, I suppose there's the swings and roundabouts. We'll have to agree to disagree.
Yeah, definitely.
So we e-commerce people, all of us know that no one's perfect and we definitely made mistakes during our business past. What other mistakes have you made, apart from sort of the accountant side of things? What mistakes have you personally made that you've learned from?
This could be a whole podcast on its own. I think the biggest one I made in this world, and I think it's the one thing that really hindered and messed up Regal's growth, is I used to think you had to be on every channel and now every channel. And it was like, well, yeah, but you can't just do Facebook. You've got to be on Google. You've got to be on Pinterest. You've got to be on Snapchat. And the reality, just focus on one channel that you do really well first and then go from there. Don't think channel market fit is spoken about enough. Like, we talk about product market fit, but there are some brands where Meta is just great for them, but Google maybe not so. That was my biggest mistake because we wasted so much budget, so much time on doing everything okay, but nothing really good.
I know, it's funny. Me and my business partner, he doesn't listen to the podcast. He should, but he doesn't, so he'll not hear this, don't worry. But we have this argument frequently whereby he wants to try everything. He wants to try all these new channels. He's like, have you not tried this? And I've heard Reddit's good, and I've heard Quora, you should try that. So I'm like, mate, let's just get one thing right and scale it, and then we'll move to the next thing. That's been how we've been successful in building the product and gaining product market fit, as you talked about. But he just, I think he loves coming up with ideas and then just assumes that I'm just going to run and make everything successful. So yeah, I totally feel your pain on that one.
I remember I had an experience with a brand once, and we was just dealing with the post iOS stuff. So Meta and Facebook ads and Instagram really was, and I felt that the founder came in and was like, oh, I booked a call with Reddit. They're starting this new marketing thing. We should chat about that. And I'm like, I'm floated here trying to fix this. So yeah, I can relate to that.
No. But how do you sort of choose your best channel? And so you're talking about channel market fit. Is it you go out and you test them all, or do you like think about your customer persona and try and match that with a channel? What's the best way?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think what I'm about to say is probably there could be someone on here next week that disagrees and fights back. But I think there's two ways with the zero-party data stuff. I think you can always ask the question of what platform are you most on, and just see what that. If 80% of people say they're on Facebook, then that's a good indication that you can do meta ads. I'm pro that, but also I think you can normally get an idea as well, the type of brand. If it's a very visual skincare wellness brand with great imagery, it's usually a sign for me that meta is great because you can do video, you can do, whereas if I was coming into a fast fashion brand tomorrow that had a product list of 300 SKUs, it's now thinking Google Shopping. Get that onto Google Shopping first, and then we can start doing the other stuff. So I think a mix of capturing data, seeing what the business actually is, but also, like you said, doing some little tests and seeing what has the best response. Now, I've still personally not gone over to TikTok or seen many brands do it. I know there's a lot of noise about it, but I still haven't seen many brands have a good ROI from TikTok personally.
Recently, well, about 6 months ago, launched an integration with TikTok Shop. So they're sort of like new way of doing shopping directly inside of TikTok. And we've had quite a few sellers who were in the beta group with us who were selling mainly on Amazon and Shopify, and then they branched out and started to do also TikTok Shop, and they found quite good success on it, to be honest, like early on. So I think it is maybe the channel of the future for millennials and things like that, like younger generation. I don't know whether it's Gen Y or Gen Z or Gen X, I can never remember. So my kids and that, they'll be the ones who will buy stuff off TikTok. And I think that could become something in the future. But I think it's sort of two things, isn't it? It's like ads on TikTok to generate traffic for your Shopify store, or do you just sell those products straight on TikTok? Because then the customer's there and they've already got all their card details and do fulfillment as well. So I think it could be something to look at in the future. So that's us done then. So I've got some closing questions which are nothing to do with the rest of the podcast, which I just ask. So who in the world of e-commerce would you like to most take to lunch and pick their brain?
Oh, I forgot his name, but the founder of Gymshark.
Oh yeah, Ben Francis.
Damn it, I forgot his name. Ben Francis. I would love to hear that story.
Yeah. He's a young'un as well, isn't he?
He's a millennial as well. Oh, I think he's a millennial.
I bet he's not like 20, 23, 24, something like that. I'm sure he's really young, like. But anyway, he did very well for himself. I've seen, not necessarily documentaries, but I've seen stuff on YouTube. I think he tells his own story, doesn't he? He's got his own YouTube channel. And I remember him talking about how it was like one of those stories that I talked about earlier, where it's like his business was built out of a need. Like he was training in the gym, and none of the gym equipment, none of the gym clothing was really made for people like him. It was made for either massive muscly blokes, or it was like normal t-shirts, and he wanted something that was like the Keep Massive muscly blokes shirts, but for him. And so he came up with that. And yes, it's quite a cool story, like, but yeah, he was mainly Shopify, wasn't he?
Shopify, yeah. And I think what's just so impressive, it's so rare to find a group of founders that can take from zero to as high as he can and stay in the business. Usually founders sell it or bring in people to run it. And I know he's brought in people, but I've rarely come across people that have been able to do that whole journey of it and adapt their skills to the business. I think it's been brilliant.
It's definitely an entrepreneur at heart. Like, yeah, I think he would have a good story to pick his brain. This next question, what one thing can e-commerce professionals do right now to boost their profitability?
Collect zero-party data.
Okay, and so the last question, what advice would you give to an e-commerce business that's just starting out to ensure that they can be profitable and grow at a sustainable rate?
Oh, great question. I'd say be very conscious of how you do your manufacturing and how many SKUs and products and minimum order quantities you have to take on. I think if you can find a way of, if you're launching a product, have a small order so you can test and change rapidly, I would say that. And on the flip side, to add a second, I'd say if you know you're building a brand and a website, start creating content around interest around that product, start collecting emails and try and build a community around it pre-launch.
Yeah, that's a bit like what we do in the SaaS space as well in terms of building a Raven fan club before you even have a product. So yeah, I think that's great advice. Cool. Right, okay. So I'll add one more question, which is just to do with how people would get in touch with you if they've got any questions around zero-party data or interested in working with you. What's the best way to get in touch?
Sure. So I'm very active on LinkedIn. That's my biggest platform. So Josh Blackburn Digital, you'll be able to find. Or you can just drop me an email at josh@blackburndigital.com. I'll risk putting my email out there for potential spam.
Yeah, thousands of emails coming your way right now. Cool. Right, okay. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Josh. It was great chatting with you. I think this will make a great episode, and I'm sure the audience will love it.
Been super fun.
See you next time.
Cheers, mate. See you later, buddy.
The e-commerce profitability show is brought to you by Link My Books. To find out more about Link My Books and how to accurately automate your e-commerce bookkeeping to ensure profitable growth, visit linkmybooks.com and then make sure to search for e-commerce profitability in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Link My Books, thanks for listening.